Welcome to Convention Reviews. Today I will be reviewing Sakura-Con 2024. This particular convention takes place in Seattle, Washington at the Seattle Convention Center. This particular convention occurs over the Easter weekend at the end of March, which is really nice considering a lot of people do have that particular weekend off for a lot of the schools in the area. Sakura-Con itself is actually quite unique in a lot of ways. The first being that it is considered to be one of the largest anime conventions in North America, as well as being the second largest on the West Coast, as well as the largest in the Pacific Northwest, which is really unique considering the attendance is well over 25,000 attendees, which is really quite impressive. The convention itself is actually spread over several different buildings, one being Arch, and the other being Summit, which is about a block away, which is really an unusual convention setup that I don't typically see at many other conventions. The inside setup of the convention center is quite interesting, where it takes place over 6 stories in both buildings, with the exhibitors hall being in the basement of Summit and the artist alley being in the Archway building. Both the exhibitors hall and the artist alley were absolutely massive, taking up almost an entire floor in themselves. And the exhibitors hall in particular was really interesting for me because a lot of the vendors there really were above and beyond what I typically see at a lot of conventions that are even mid-sized, with such vendors coming out such as Yen Press, Bandai Namco of Gundam and Idol fame, Arta Wigs, as well as many other official Japanese book and manga licensors, which was quite interesting, as well as Crunchyroll had a large presence at the convention as well. There was certainly a lot of merchandise that I typically do not see available at other conventions, which definitely is a big drawing point. Outside of that, the other aspect that sort of makes Sakura-Con really interesting is that they also had a lot of industry panels, also from Yen Press and Crunchyroll, rolling out a lot of upcoming premieres, as well as recent licenses from both companies. In terms of invited guests, there actually was quite a large selection for this particular convention. As one would expect, there was quite a few heavy-hitting English voice actors. A lot of them, I will say, as somebody that attends a lot of conventions on the East Coast, I have not personally seen, which definitely was a treat in itself. But probably more interesting is that they actually had quite a large selection of Japanese guests invited as well. This included many voice actors, especially from Mobile Suit Gundam as well as Love Live, as well as there were 2 guests from Studio Trigger, which was a real treat in itself as well. And originally there was supposed to be 2 bands that were supposed to play at the convention, which is really a surprise considering a lot of conventions usually only get 1 musical guest. Survive Said the Prophet was originally supposed to come to this convention, but ended up bailing out at the last minute. So the only particular music guest was Spire, who ended up doing their Saturday show as well as a shorter Friday show to make up for the lack of the other band, which was a nice touch. At the Spire concert, they definitely covered a lot of their big hits from many different anime, from Bleach to Haikyuu to Iron Blooded Orphans, as well as Gintama, as well as many original titles as well. The crowd was quite pumped for it and was quite a great show overall. One of the things I really enjoy about this particular convention is that even though there is a lot of people that attend this particular con, it never really felt crowded at any point during the overall convention. This is partially due to the fact that there's so much square footage in the overall con that really, with the exception of a handful of instances when, a major event like, the Masquerade or something's going on lets out, there really was never like a sense of a bottleneck. Although I will say there were a handful of events that you definitely needed to be there early if you wanted to get into it. Although I will say that there were a lot of really high quality fan panels throughout the entire convention from beginning to end, and really covered a lot of really interesting aspects and was really professionally put together and definitely had their own flavor of performing, which was definitely interesting. I think probably one of my personal favorites was uh, a couple of panelists who did a sort of Fox News style panel, which was kind of a little bit of a troll, but also really funny at the same time. Which really is interesting to see people kind of do like a performative arts into their lecture speeches as well, which was really quite fun. One of the other major draws to this convention was the fact that they had a really well developed game room as well. And this was something that was really interesting because it had everything from pinball machines to like old classic, 90s, early 2000s, video games, as well as the more recent rhythm games, which really was quite fun to see a lot of people interacting with this over the weekend as well, which was quite a treat to say the least. One of the other aspects that I really also enjoyed about this particular convention is the fact that there was some really amazing cosplay throughout the weekend. And, you really saw like a really wide gambit of different styles of cosplay from, more mainstream popular things like Jujutsu Kaisen and staples like Dragon Ball. But, you also saw, quite a bit of, people doing their own thing with taking their own interpretations on particular characters, which was really cool, as well as there were quite a few people that did some really amazing, over the top, old school uh, anime as well, which really was interesting to me to see a lot of characters like that. But I do have to say that even outside of the costume contest, there were quite a few regular cosplayers that had some really A game level costumes, many of which I wasn't able to get pictures of as well. But it really was amazing because I would really take a picture of one or two people and I literally would never see them again throughout the rest of the convention, which really is kind of one of those things of like just having a ball, just walking around the convention center, just seeing who you'll see around the next corner. But arguably for me, one of the crown jewels of Sakura-Con is its AMV contest. Now, I will admit that at a lot of medium to smaller size conventions, oftentimes the AMV contests tend to be very small and short, being, only about an hour or two of the overall event menu, whereas there almost was a dedicated room for AMVs throughout the entire convention. And it really was interesting to see people from all different sects as well, whether it be, the brand new stuff that's competing this year for, best animation, as well as, re- reels of classics from, years past. They had a really fun segment, which was sort of like, Grandpa's AMV case, which, really pulled out a lot of AMVs from like 20 plus years ago, which was really amazing considering like how limiting the editing technology was back then. As well as they had a really funny one there featuring TV commercials and memes, which was absolutely like you were laughing hysterically the entire time. It definitely seems like this was a major draw throughout the weekend for a lot of people as well, which was really fun to say the least. One of the last things I really like to say about this convention as well is the fact that, really when it comes to overall content, it really is like this is an all star convention to go and attend. Unfortunately, I had to leave on Sunday morning, but, usually when you go to a lot of conventions, by the time you hit noon on Sunday, it's really starting to like wind down and peter out. But I mean, they had some really amazing content going, really up until the very end of the convention, which really is a shame that, I ended up having to miss it. But, it really gives me a lot of incentive to, come back next year and, really explore this particular convention. Once again, this was Convention Reviews. If you happen to attend SoccerCon or have any notes on anything I may have missed from this particular review, please let me know. Or if you attended this convention at all, I'd really like to know your feedback and know if there's anything I may have overlooked for this particular convention as well. Please like and subscribe and be on the lookout for my next convention review.